Peace, love, and light. This is your sister, Dr. Maat, coming before you with another powerful discussion with another powerful guest. Today, I have with me Brother Mike Africa Jr., who is a second generation Move member. And some of you may know about the Move organization in Philadelphia. Some of you may not know about it, but you will know about it today. Peace and love to you, brother. Thank you for coming on. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about the story of the Move organization.
Absolutely. Now, brother, I learned about Move a few years back. I believe it was around 2013. There was a documentary that dropped. It was at one point available on YouTube and Amazon, and I haven't seen it. Like I've been looking for it and haven't found it, and we know how that is. We know how that goes. But it was a documentary called "Let the Fire Burn." And when I say, brother, that documentary touched my soul, it touched my soul, and it made me realize that you learn about Tulsa, Oklahoma, you learn about Elaine, Arkansas, what happened there, you learn about Rosewood, but you think that these things happened many years ago in 1917, 1919, and 1923, and here it is, right on the East Coast in Philadelphia in 1985. There was another Black community, that was attacked that people just never heard of. Now, I know that this community, this organization, Move, was founded by a brother. His name was John Africa. Brother, can you tell us about John Africa for those who've never heard of who he was and what he did? Could you tell us about John Africa, what he stood for, his principles, his teachings?
Yeah, John Africa was born and raised in Philadelphia in West Philly. And he was born in the 30s during the Depression. And at that time, it was hard for Black people to get jobs. And, so at a certain point when he was a teenager, he was drafted into the military. And he was forced to serve in the Korean War. And when he was in the war, he saw a lot of destruction of life, the bombs breaking and destroying the mountains and the rivers that were clean and you could drink out of it, the day before. But this day it's like, polluted with fragments from bombs. And, he saw many men destroyed and shot and burned and blown to pieces. And just seeing that, really touched him and inspired him to fight for life and fight for what was right. He's always had the spirit where he was protective of life, but to actually see life destroyed and blown up like it was in that war, it really compelled him to to just do something more about it. And he decided that he was going to do something, and he started an organization called the Move organization. The mission of Move is to protect life, people, animals, and the environment, and to encourage other people to protect life too. And so when he was giving people this information, he ran into opposition, because in building community and building this understanding about life, and life has feelings, and animals shouldn't be encaged, and the water shouldn't be polluted, and people shouldn't be enslaved in these prisons, and just all this information that was threatening to the system and the money that they were making off of the enslavement of life. So he met opposition. The organization met opposition from law enforcement and from politicians. And so in dealing with this opposition, Move was attacked and assaulted by these police and officials. And in dealing with it, Move was defending themselves.
Okay, and so before we get to what actually took place, thank you for explaining what he stood for. But okay, so his organization, they inhabited a certain area in Philadelphia. Is that correct? They bought some. Okay. Mm-hmm.
The headquarters of the organization was in West Philly in a section called Powelton Village.
Okay, and so in that community, could you tell us what took place? I believe they were growing their own food, educating their own children. So what was life inside of that community? What was life like inside of that community?
So yeah, there were the children didn't go to school. This is long before cyber and charter schools that are acceptable for homeschooling. Move taught the children at home, the things that we believe in, not the system education. Um, the the diet of Move was understood to be raw foods, raw fruits and vegetables. The hair was radically different than what people were used to. People were rocking afros and processes and whatnot. Move had dreadlocks. The type of clothing was different. Move people did not put any emphasis on material things. So the women didn't wear makeup. They didn't wear high heels and jewelry and whatnot. So it was very simple. And John Africa explained to people that you come here with all of the things that you need. Nature equips you with everything that you need. And to go outside of that is a violation of life. And so what was going on in that community was, the women giving birth to their children without hospitals, without doctors, without medicines. This European style of poisonous medicine. Um, Exercise was happening. A lot of people were, in incredible shape, exercising daily to stay healthy. A lot of water. People were getting off of drugs. John Africa was curing people of sicknesses and ailments that they had. What was happening was a revolution that was changing people from weak to strong, changing people from sick to healthy, and getting other people in the community to understand how to do that too. And that revolution was just very contagious.
Mm. And his teachings, from what I read on the internet, and I'm not sure if this book is still available, there was a book called The Guidelines. Is that book still in print? Can we get that book on Amazon? Because I heard that that book kind of details everything or all of his teachings and his philosophies.
Right. The book that John Africa wrote called The Guidelines. It's not available to outside of the organization people. The members of the
Oh.
organization maintain it and possess it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that's why you can't find it like on Amazon or like at a Barnes and Nobles. Okay. I thought it was published and out there, but you're saying that this was sort of like it was an internal thing.
Um, it has become internal.
Mhm.
Originally, it was not, but there were certain things inside of those guidelines that were very personal, and also there were things where John Africa talked about certain things, and
Mhm.
releasing certain information to the public became problematic because when you're talking about things like armed struggle or self-defense, and people would read that information and take it with their own interpretation and try to apply it, and Move began to get the blame.
Okay. Oh,
Also, there were certain things where people would prostitute parts of it, to like make money off of it. And when it came to things like diet, like the big thing is the diet, the raw food thing. Like raw food restaurants didn't exist in 1975, but not. But since the last 10 years, they're all over the world.
mhm, mhm.
And the hair, like a lot of things people didn't do, and once the system found a way to market the natural living of people, they exploit it. So John Africa didn't want to release too much information too fast anymore.
Okay. All right. And so I know that he established the MOVE organization, I believe, in 1972. Once he established this organization, as you stated before, he was met with a lot of opposition. I know that the organization was raided a few times. He had to go to court at one point in time. I read online that he represented himself and he was acquitted. And I know that your parents got caught up in the in a raid. Could you explain that, your parents, and what happened with the MOVE with that particular situation?
So when my parents So, in putting out the information and building a following, the the local officials took notice, and they saw the way Move was living, and they saw, when the circus came to town, and Move protested against the Barnum and Bailey Ringling Brothers sadism, forcing animals, tigers. They would take tigers from the freedom of India and bring them to a circus, and force them to jump through hoops of fire. And John Africa explained, like, what kind of intimidation, what kind of electrical prodding, what kind of poking with spikes that you have to do to force a tiger to jump through a hoop of fire. These people can't even get their own kids to eat their vegetables,
Mm.
but they're getting tigers to jump through rings of fire. And the intimidation and the fear and the hurt that tiger must feel to actually do that is tremendous. It's hurtful, it's painful, and it's messed up, and Move ain't gonna tolerate it. So we protested against that industry. And the same with the zoo. Take those elephants from the thousands of miles away from of their land, of their endless acres of freedom in Africa, and bring them and put them in a tiny cage in Philadelphia.
Mm.
And so, in exposing that, and encouraging other people to not support it, the the zookeepers and established owners would call the police. And of course, because as we all know, the police are not there to serve and protect the people.
Not at
Their
all.
job their job is to protect the system from the people when the people realize that the system is a problem. And so when the police came to to the to the to the call from the zoo or from the circus, what they did, instead of working out the issue and allowing Move people to exercise their right to freedom of speech, what they would do is beat Move people. And
Mm.
pregnant Move women were beat into miscarriage, and members of the organization, the brothers' teeth were knocked out of their mouths with nightsticks, and their heads would be cracked against glass windows. And so Move people, going through this for years, Move people at one point, one of our sisters, Rhonda, Africa,
Mm.
was at a protest at City Hall to demand the release of one of our brothers, Chuck Africa, and the sheriffs attacked her, and they beat her while she was 8 months pregnant. And she was beaten so bad that the next day her baby was born with
Mm.
black and blue bruises all over his body, and stillborn.
Mm.
So Move took a stand. They exercised their right to self-defense and armed themselves with weapons, and on that platform, and they read a list of demands, and they read a list of information about what they're not going to tolerate anymore. And Delbert Africa told him, he said, when if you come in here and shooting and killing our brothers and sisters, we will shoot back in defense of our lives. And that standoff lasted for almost a year, and it culminated into the police coming to Move's house on August 8th, 1978, and they shot the house up with tear gas and bullets and water. And while the police were shooting, a police officer was shot and killed. And of
Mm.
course, the police blamed the shooting and killing of the police officer on Move. So Move people were arrested. My mother was in that. She was arrested and put in prison. My dad was there. He was arrested. My Uncle Chuck was there, and six other members of the group. And my mom was pregnant with me at the time, and I was 5 weeks after the arrest. I was actually born in the jail cell. My mother did that secretly so that no one would try to harm me. So while they were in court, my parents and the other members, they were sentenced to 100 years each in prison.
Mm.
So John Africa, who was not there at the time, he was sought by local authorities too, and he was captured in in Rochester, New York, 3 years later, and he was put on trial too. He was facing a lot of years in prison, multiple decades. He would have never lived long enough to actually get out. I mean, it was like 175 years or something. And he represented himself in court, and that was a remarkable trial, a remarkable display of wisdom on his part. Every day he was confident that he was not going to be convicted, and he represented himself. And when that trial was over, he walked out victoriously, free.
And so brother Mike Africa, um so did during this trial, because online I've been seeing a lot of the Move Nine. So were your parents a part of the Move Nine
Yes,
that you all were trying to? Okay,
yes,
so it was nine people who were found guilty, and all of them were sentenced to 100 years, or just your parents?
all nine.
Okay, all nine of them. All right, and does that nine include Mumia, or is that a separate incident?
No, Mumia was a separate incident.
Okay. Okay, and your mother was just released last year. Is that correct?
So after 40 years of
Mm-hmm.
fighting for the release of the Move Nine, after 40 years, yeah, my mom was released, and
Yeah.
then so like I was born in prison, and then I grew up, got married, had 4 kids, and all of this time, and 40 years after the arrest, that's when my mom came home, and then 4 months later, my dad came home too.
Oh wow. Okay, and as you explained to me on the telephone, you said Mumia is basically one of the last, what you would say, Move members still behind bars.
Yeah, so Mumia is yeah, he's the last of our family that's still behind bars. Yeah,
Okay, and what
but
happened with Mumia? Like, what was his story? I think they accused him of shooting a police officer or something like that, and I believe this was like in the early '80s. I remember Tupac, when he was alive, he was very vocal about freeing Mumia, freeing Mutulu Shakur. But what is Mumia's story?
so Mumia he is a journalist,
Mm,
and when all of the incidents happened with Move, he as a journalist he would report on the story. He would report the story, and what happened was the police, they have the news media on their side, and they would try to get him to not tell the story. They would try to get him to slant it in their direction. And when he would say, no, the police did these things. No, the police shot people. Yes, they beat people. And, they would try to have him, stop telling what happened, you
mm,
know. And when they would lie, he would say they were lying. When the police would lie, he would say the police were lying. So, they couldn't afford that. It was detrimental to their case. And so they targeted him as well. And
mm,
they tried to get him fired from his job, and they did several times. He has a family, he has a wife and kids too, and he had to feed his family. And they got him fired from his jobs. They also targeted him and his family and his wife and his kids. And eventually, on December 9th, 1981, he was targeted, and he got caught up in a situation. A cop was killed, and of course they blamed it on him. Even though to this day there's witnesses that say that he didn't do it. There's a confession from the real killer. Um,
mm,
there, listen, that case is crazy. Here's the three main points for me. There's a confession from the real killer. Number one. Number two. 15 of the 35 cops that investigated his case were brought up on charges of intimidating witnesses, planting evidence, and that's almost half of the investigative police. The other thing is the prosecuting attorney. The prosecuting attorney, Joseph McGill, he was so corrupt and inaccurate, and he was disbarred for prosecutorial misconduct. He was getting people life in prison when because he would say that uh, uh, they were shot to death. And when the coroner did their report, they would find out that the person was stabbed to death. I mean,
Mm.
his record was so inaccurate, and he was disbarred. So the players that were involved in Mumia's case was so dirty. But because Mumia is a man, because he's a black man, because he's a person who speaks out about injustice, and especially against the injustice with Mumia was targeted, and they put him on death row.
Mm. I had no idea that he was on death row, but I know that you all have been fighting for years to get him out. I know that he's gone up for parole, a few times, and was denied parole. So where is his case now? Like, what needs to happen now? What are you all doing to get him out now, and how can we assist you with that?
So I spoke to the governor of Pennsylvania yesterday, a
Mm.
contingent of members of Black Lives Matter and myself from Move and Black. There's a collective that we created since this George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Rayshard Brooks murders. We created a collective here in Philadelphia called the Black Philly Radical Collective, and we got a meeting with the governor, Tom Wolf, and we talked to Wolf about what it is that we need to do to get him out of prison, and also to get Wolf to recognize that there are political prisoners here in the state of Pennsylvania. And so we're working on a campaign to prove that information to the governor through legislation, through information, through grassroots organizing, and we definitely need help with that because all of the if there's we need support from every angle. Mumia is in prison essentially for killing a cop, even though he's innocent. Um, but the government doesn't really care about innocence or guilt. They care about stopping the people that's interrupting their program.
Mm.
You know, they believe in enslavement. They're making money from these prisons. They don't want prisons to end, whether the people are innocent or guilty.
Mm.
So we definitely need help with Mumia's case.
Okay, and how can we help you? I know monetarily, and we'll get to that. But how can we help you? I mean, should we make phone calls to the governor, email the governor? I don't know. Go to take to social media, share videos. Like what is on? I mean, what do you want us to do specifically?
So what I'm asking people to do, what we're asking people to do, is we're asking people to contact your local politicians, your council members, your senators, your congress people, like anybody that you can find in your area, specifically these three: congressmen, councilmen, and senators. Those three, and get them to write a support letter for the release of Mumia Abu Jamal. And I can provide any evidence that people need. I can provide any information that they need to prove Mumia's innocence. And let's get those letters. And then people, once they have those letters, they can send those letters to me, and I'll get them to the place that they need to get to.
Okay, and how can people contact you, brother?
People can contact me at my website, MikeAfricaJr.com. And on that website, there's a page that if you scroll down to the bottom, I mean, it'll show you like what I'm working on and what I'm doing, um, and then if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there's different sections where you can contact us or how to support and all of that kind of stuff. You can follow the links and it'll show you where to go.
Okay,
And then
beautiful.
just put in
Mhm.
there like what you willing to do, what you can do, what you need me to ask you to do, whatever.
Okay, and what about financial support, brother? How can we get some financial support over there to brother Mumia? Because I mean, like you said before, he has a wife, he has children, he's on the
Right.
inside, he has needs. So how can we support him?
So the same way, like if you go to my website, MikeAfricaJr.com,
Hmm.
you'll find a donate button, and then just donate to the cause, and we'll make sure that the funds go to where they need to go to get the to keep the campaign to free Mumia going.
Okay, and
That's
brother,
what that.
And I know you have a donate button. Do you also have a Cash App? I think you and I discussed the Cash App.
I do. I have a Cash App. It's the $
Mm-hmm.
Mike Africa Jr.
Mike
Dollar
Africa
sign
Jr.
Mike
Mm-hmm.
Africa Jr. Yeah.
All right, because I'm getting ready to make a. Let me put this in the chat, and I'm getting ready to make a donation to you right now, brother. So we
Okay.
can
Thank
keep
you.
this thing. So we can keep this thing going. Family, please donate. You can go to Mike Africa Jr. Oh, does it sound like static to you?
It does. It does.
Yeah. Hold
I
on
hear
one.
static. Yeah.
Yes. Hold on 1 second. All right. Do you still hear the static?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it sounds really bad. Family in the chat room, could you let me know if you still hear static? Because I hear it in my headphones. And I don't know whether it's me. Let me see something. Let me see if I mute you or is it me? No, brother Mike Africa, it's you. Yeah, it's static coming from your end. So when I muted your mic, I didn't hear it.
Hold on. How's that? Can you hear it?
Well, I gotta start talking.
Okay. I'm
Okay.
talking now.
Yes, and I'm speaking. Do you hear the static now, brother? Or
I don't hear it now. I think. Hold on. I don't hear it when I'm talking right now.
okay, but it's just when I begin to talk and communicate, you hear the static.
I don't hear it much now. Now that you're talking, I don't hear it now.
Okay. All right. All right. So let me show this Cash App on the screen. Family, please donate. Let me go ahead and
No.
mute you.
So Junior is Jr. Not this.
Oh,
Not
okay.
not spelling it out completely. Just Jr.
Okay. So let me retype that. Mike Africa Jr. Okay, so is that the correct
That's
one,
it.
brother? All right, good,
That's
good,
it.
good. I'm getting ready to make a
Thank you.
donation to you, and brother, I want to thank you for coming on. But look, before you go, and hold on, let me get this donation together for you. Please let me know if you receive it. Let me see. You said Mike Africa Jr. Yep, and I'm gonna put for Mumia.
Okay.
For Mumia. So, family, please go ahead and make a donation. We definitely gotta support our freedom fighters, and there are a lot of brothers still behind bars. Can you name some other political prisoners,
Yes.
brother Mike Africa?
Absolutely. Russell Schultz is a political prisoner. Just like this. Just like there are a lot of people that are fighting for the freedom of and the justice for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and they're getting arrested. Um, that's what was happening in the 70s and the 60s and the 80s. People were fighting for justice back then, and they're still in prison. Russell Maroon Schultz has been in prison since 1971, along with his co-defendant Frederick Burton. Then there's Joseph Bowen. Then you got Mumia, and there's a lot of people, Mutulu Shakur, that are still in prison because of just fighting to make change and grinding. We got Asada Shakur, who's exiled because of her stance against injustice. You have Kamal Siddiqui, who was rearrested in 2000, I think, um, for something that happened in like the 80s. And he's got life in prison. Like, there's a lot of political prisoners out there that need support. My focus has been Mumia in large part because he is a member of our family, and he is a person that was directly connected to helping support my parents when they were in prison. And so I've taken up the fight to free him in large part. But make no mistake, there's a lot of other political prisoners, and I work to help them too, like Leonard Peltier. We have to really put the effort in, because if it can happen to them, it can happen to us. And injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere.
That's a fact. And right while you were calling out the names of the political prisoners, I was thinking about I think the brother's name is Sundiata Akoli.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, so I believe that brother is still fighting for justice.
Sundiata Kohli, he's another one. Like, like in some of these cases, these people were not even in the same city that the offense happened, and they're still in prison and been there for decades. I mean, that was what happened with Geronimo Pratt. Geronimo was in prison, and where the incident happened, he wasn't even there.
And I believe that brother Geronimo Pratt, he served about what, 27 or 28 years in prison.
Something like that. Yeah,
Yeah, before he was released. And then I heard
that's
that
right.
once he got out, they said he went over to Africa, I believe.
He did. That's right.
Yeah, West
That's
Africa.
right. I met him. He came to Philly. And we did an event for him here. And yeah, yeah. Mm.
Yeah, so we definitely gotta support our political prisoners. Now, quick question. Going back to the Move organization. Let me put it on mute while I'm asking the question. But going back to the Move organization, um, the documentary "Let the Fire Burn." Would you say that that documentary accurately depicted the More organization and told the history of the Move organization?
No, that was just about the incident that happened on May 13th. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Brother, go ahead. I can hear you now.
Okay, good. That was a phone call was coming in, and I had to end it, and it just disrupted it.
Oh,
But
okay,
so
okay.
on May 13th, 1985, when we were fighting to get our people out of prison, we had so much pressure on the system, and they were refusing to release the people. So what happened was, instead of like giving us an investigation to figure out the thing, the injustice, they flew a helicopter over our house and they dropped a bomb on our house. 11 people were killed. 5 of them were kids, and we've never gotten justice for that. So so Let the Fire Burn was a documentary that was made about that incident, and the reason it's called Let the Fire Burn is because while the house was on fire and the people were trying to get out of the house, the police commissioner and the fire commissioner made a decision to let the fire burn to kill the people.
Okay. So, all right. So you said that that was just about the incident. Oh, let me put it on mute. Yeah, I think that I know with StreamYard, sometimes like when you're streaming and someone's on a cell phone, the connection isn't the best. I think someone was telling me that StreamYard is better like when everyone is on desktop or laptop computers, or sometimes when you're on phones, the connection is bad. But okay, so you're saying that it wasn't a good documentary that explained like the history, but in telling the story of the bombing, do you think that it was accurate?
Yeah, I think that that was the best documentary that was ever done on Move. I think that, because even though it was only mostly focusing on that incident, it did explain a lot about the organization and the people that were represented in the documentary that were representing Move, Laverne and Louise, who are my grandmother and my aunt. They did a really good job of handling that information, and also the other people too, like Father Paul Washington, and the cops themselves really did a good job of exposing themselves for the disdain that they had for Move, just because of their blatant prejudice and racism. So I think Jason Osder, the filmmaker, captured that very well, and I think he did a very good job of putting that information together and capturing it on film the way he did.
Okay. And so I'm trying to think what was my last question for you. Oh, on the telephone, you and I talked about community building and why that is a threat. So a lot of us are like, look, we want to build communities, but it seems like every time black folks get together and we begin to pool our resources together to build the communities, the governments come in, they find a reason to come in, infiltrate, and bomb our communities or attack, our men, women, and children. And on the telephone, you were breaking down why that was so. So could you break that down to the audience? Why is it that when Black folks get together and build communities, why that is a threat and why the government comes in to destroy it?
Because community building is self-sufficient and independent, and when you are independent and you don't need the system, you don't need the government, you don't need their to support them, you're not supporting them, you're extracting yourself and your community out of supporting them, and you're putting that those resources into each other, into this community, it's a threat because the government, the system thrives and lives off of our support. If you don't buy products from McDonald's, McDonald's won't sell hamburgers. And, if you don't buy products from Nike, Nike ain't gonna be selling no shoes. And if so we have to, if you're building community and you're supporting each other and you're providing your own resources to the community, the system is, it's a threat because they make money off of us. They make slaves out of us. And if we're working together to support each other and not support them, that is the biggest threat that we can be to them.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so, and we've seen that example of how far they will go. And we saw that on May 13th, 1985, when they bombed our house. We saw that. We've heard about that and read about that about Tulsa, Oklahoma, in 1921, when their black community had over 600 businesses. They had their own barbershops. They had their own banks, their own trash pickup. They had their own schools. They had their own libraries. They had their own everything. And because they were thriving, a thriving community, they were bombed for it.
Yeah,
So,
and
go ahead.
yeah. I was just also thinking about, like you said, in Rosewood, you know what I mean, and in other places, down in, they said Durham in North Carolina, even in Washington D.C. So, I guess a lot of people, and I actually had a younger cousin who asked me. He said, "Well, what's to say they won't do this again?" So a lot of black folks, or some black folks, are fearful of going out here and building communities because they studied the past or study history, and history says that when we do create communities, that they will come in and destroy our community. So what do you say about that? I mean, should we continue? Should we oh, I can't let me put it on mute again. So brother, should we continue to we talk about pooling our resources together and buying black and practicing group economics. Should we continue to try to build communities, knowing that there's a possibility that they could come in and destroy them? So what should we do? Should we continue to build communities here? Should we repatriate? Because I know you have some brothers and sisters who are saying, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to Tanzania. I'm going to West Africa. I'm going to Gambia. So some brothers and sisters are saying, no, let's not build here. Let's go to Africa and repatriate. And then you have some brothers and sisters say, no, this is my country too. My ancestors built this country. I'm staying right here. So what are your thoughts on that, brother?
My thoughts on that are, every land that we stand on is ours. Then we don't need to. If you want to go back to Africa and do it there, by all means, I support you. If you want to do it here in America, do it here. This is our land too.
Okay, but
And
what,
so, like, I'm saying, yeah, we should definitely build community, because if in building community, we're still having the opportunity to support each other. We should not just support each other when it comes to finances. We should also support each other when it comes to self-defense.
mm-hmm.
And when the government comes in and tries to eliminate us, we should band together and spread that information to other communities. And we should pull together, just like we pull together resources, we should pull together defense and fight. We should fight back. And yeah, it's possible that we will be wiped out. It is possible, but we're being wiped out anyway if we don't fight. When George Floyd was kneeled on, there was many bystanders, and it's possible that it's very likely that if they would have jumped on that cop and knocked him off, they would have been shot and kneeled on too.
Mm.
And I understand why they didn't. Who wants to be shot, right? But there is, um, this thing with community is important because we're being targeted, and just because we're being just because we're being targeted is the reason to build community.
Mm.
The reason people don't build community isn't because, in large part, it's not because they feel that they'll be targeted. The reason people don't build community really in 2020 is because they are not educated about the importance of it.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are not taught to pool their money. Black people, I'm from the hood in West Philadelphia. How Will Smith said it on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, in West Philadelphia, born and raised.
Yes.
Playground is where I spent most of my
My
days.
days.
I didn't spend it learning how to do calculations about working to, pool my money with my cousin and my brother and my sister, and learning about politics so that we understand how to make sure that we got generational wealth and all of that. We didn't learn that kind of stuff growing up. We were told to go to school, get a job, if you're lucky, go to college, and do that. And when we so like, as a community, like, we so afraid of trusting the brother next to us. We ain't trying to give him none of our money to hold so we can build a community, or share none of it, because we've not been educated to understand that kind of stuff. Many other races have been educated, though. They work together. If you see the Asians, they be working together to get the Asian stores and Asian markets. You got Chinatowns all across this country. You know what I'm saying? You got Poppy Land here in Philly. We got Poppy Land, where the Hispanic people got their community hooked up. Black
Mm,
people, you know what I'm saying? Like, and those Hispanic communities are all over the country and outside the country too. I was over in France. They got them over there. But black people, in terms of pulling our money together so that we can buy cases and boxes and, buy rice in bulk, we don't do that. We go buy it from the Chinese store.
mm.
You know what I mean? And I ain't saying that we shouldn't support them. I'm just saying that, like, that the reason why people don't really be involved in community is because we're not educated about that as a whole. When we
Yeah.
go to school, we go to the schools that the government set up and learn their curriculum. We don't learn that. Doesn't teach us how to be self-sufficient and self-sustaining. That teaches us to honor Christopher Columbus, who was a tyrant. Like, it ain't even fair how we're taught. And yeah, I mean, I see a message coming in. Africa is the true home. I mean, yeah, it's definitely like a place where we from and all of that. But the whole land is ours. Like, look, this country, like, Africa is like the home of Africans, Native Americans. My grandmother was a Native American Iroquois Indian. She from here. You know what I'm saying? Like this, but I'm saying Europeans wasn't here. This is Africa. This is our home too. Like, I mean, we on here. The land is ours. The land is ours. This is our land.
Mm. All right,
All
brother.
of it.
You said all of it.
All of it.
Absolutely. But I couldn't agree with you more when you said that miseducation has a lot to do with why we don't ethno aggregate, as to why we don't ethno aggregate, um, to build communities, to build and support businesses. A lot of that has to do with our miseducation. A lot of that has to do with our culture, our values. A lot of those cultures that you named, you spoke about the Hispanics, and I think you mentioned the Asians. Well, if you look at their cultures are extremely communal, and and they're educated to be a communal people. The type of values that they have, you know what I mean. Community is a value. Building businesses is a value. Being self sufficient is a value, and so I agree. Nonetheless, I do agree with what you said about the miseducation. So how do we fix it then? How do we change the mindset? How do we change the mindset? I know that LeBron James opened up a school, and a lot of people were congratulating him for opening up a school for um, at-risk children, and it was definitely a powerful move. And I also congratulated him publicly, but I couldn't help but to think, how effective will that school be if they're still using a Eurocentric curriculum? You get what I'm saying,
Yeah,
brother Mike? Like, how
absolutely.
effective will it be?
It won't be effective in creating change for us if the curriculum is the same as what I mean. I When I was growing up and I went to school, most of my teachers were black, but they were still teaching me the curriculum of the oppressor. So it doesn't matter who teaches you how to be oppressed. I mean, you're still, if that's what you're learning, if that's what you're going with, you're going to be oppressed. If you're, so like, we gotta teach a different curriculum. We
Absolutely.
got to, and it starts in the home. We got to teach our kids the truth. Don't let these people tell you that Christopher Columbus was a great man who discovered America, and you know that he was a rapist and a robber and a thief and a criminal and an
Hmm.
enslaver. Nah,
And a murderer.
all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I agree with you that the education starts in the home, and we also have to get involved in institution building. We have to educate our babies. We have to control all of the institutions that are responsible for shaping the minds of our children, including the media. What our children watch on
Oh, absolutely.
television, yeah, what our children watch on television, what they listen to on the radio, what they see and hear on the internet. All of these things play a factor in shaping the mindset of our babies, and we have to control those entities if we want to change the mindset. You know.
Absolutely.
All right. Well,
Absolutely.
well, thank you so much, brother Mike Africa, for
Thank
coming
you.
on with me tonight. Do you have any closing words for the listening audience?
I just want to say thank you to you, Dr. Maat, for letting me be on this show, and thank you to the audience for listening to me. And we gotta commit. We gotta build community. Community means common unity. Let's work together like Cuba did and get these foes out of our country and roll on the way we supposed to, on the move.
On the move, brother. And let me ask you this: was move an acronym, or move
No,
just was move?
no,
Okay, so
no.
because
It just
because I
means movement.
it just means movement, because I always
Yeah,
saw it in like all caps, and so I used to say, well, is this a acronym, or is this a, you
yeah.
know,
I heard a lot of acronyms that people thought it was, but that's not it.
that's
It
not
just
it.
means movement.
It
Nah,
just means
it don't.
movement.
It don't mean monkeys on vines everywhere. I promise you.
All right. All right. Well, thank
Yeah.
you, brother, so much for coming on the platform and sharing your story with us. Family, please support the movement. You can go to Mike Africa. Is it MikeAfricaJr.com, or just Mike Africa?
MikeAfricaJr.com.
MikeAfricaJr.com, or you can cash app him at Mike Africa Jr., but not Junior spelled all the way out as JR. And brother, let me know if you got my cash app. I do believe that I sent you something. Do you see it on
Okay.
your phone?
Actually, I do. Thank you very much.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And family, so please go ahead and donate to the movement. And also, as he stated, let's reach out to our local congressmen, councilmen, and get letters of support for
Yes.
Brother Mumia.
Yes.
Brother Mike Africa stated that if you need information to send to them in order to, I guess, to request these letters of support, to let him know. But we need to get these
Yes.
letters of support so that we can get our brother home. Because as you said, brother, you said there's a small window left, right?
Small window. If this is it.
Yeah,
If
this
he
is,
can't get it, he don't get it.
oh my goodness. And so when you say small window, are we looking at like 6 months, 1 year,
1,
two years?
a year and a half. That's all we got.
That's all we got. So, family, we need your support. We need these letters of support. And matter of fact, I'm gonna get on the horn tomorrow, brother, and call my local congressman and councilman and email some folks to get some letters of support. So, thank you so much, brother, for coming on.
Thank you. Any
Family.
information to
Mhm.
help convince them that he's innocent, you just hit me up at MikeAfricaJr.com and I'll get it to you.
All right. So, thank you for tuning in, family. I will see you again soon. Peace, love, and light.
On the move.